Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mental Health May, books that kept me sane. The idea of this is I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite books that I've read over the past year, while on the screen I'm actually making a book. And I've done this tutorial quite a few times on this channel, so it's not a tutorial, even though I have a habit of still like showing what I'm using and the steps. If you want the tutorial for that, then I will leave a link for you to check that out if you haven't seen it already or if you're interested. And I did try something a little bit different in the end, which you'll see, but nothing spectacular. Let's just dive right in. So last year for Mental Health May, I talked about books for healing. These are just my favorites. This is not going to be like some in-depth video essay or anything like that. Just talking about the books that I enjoyed that kept me sane as I was experiencing a lot of stuff, a lot of chaos. I'm going to start off with young adult books. And if you've watched my video about character growth and development, I talked about 2 books that I wrote when I was a teenager / young adult. I figured that I should also read young adult books since that's the lane that I'm in right now, as I'm seeing if I can still publish this book that I wrote when I was a young adult. So anyways, top 5 young adult books that I read. The first one is Zyla and Kai by Christina Forrest. This book, I think this is her second young adult book. I really enjoyed this. Is my favorite one out of the top 5 because it wasn't only through the perspective of the 2 main characters, it was the perspective of everybody. It's a boy and a girl who met over the summer at a summer job. This is like the story of how they got to know each other, but the book doesn't start off that way. So apparently there was a senior trip or something. They're missing. Everything was going fine, then there was an argument, and then they ended up disappearing somewhere. So now it's how they ended up liking each other and getting into a relationship, and how that played through, and other people who played a part in their relationship. So it's the perspective of everybody. I thought that was cool. I never read a book like that before. This also does a great job at depicting flashbacks in a way that flows and makes sense, because there are other books that I've read where it's supposed to be a flashback, but because of the way it's written, you wouldn't really know until you read further down. So then you have to jump back up a couple of pages or so to be like, oh wait, yeah, that's a flashback. This book does a very great job of the timeline and explaining things from everyone's perspective. So it's not just Zyla, it's not just Kai, it's their parents, it's their friends, it's the exes, it's everybody. So it's really interesting to see everyone's perspective. So I highly recommend that. The next book is I Want to Be Where You Are, which is also by Christina Forrest. This was her first young adult book, I believe. In this one, the main character, is she a junior in high school? Her father, unfortunately, passed away in a car accident when she was really young. And so she has a fear of driving, but she's also into ballet. There's an audition that she wants to compete in to get into a certain ballet school. Her mom is going on a cruise with her boyfriend, so she's going, but her mother doesn't know that she's going. So she's waiting for her mother to leave so that she could drive to this audition. Her mom is scared to leave her alone, like she's starting to have second thoughts about it, but her boyfriend's like, listen, it's fine, you deserve this break, let's go on vacation and have a good time. They finally convince her to go. And then when she's getting ready to leave, there's a boy across the street who was her best friend at one point, but now she can't stand him because of something that he did like a year ago. But he ends up persuading her to take him on her trip, or at least to the train station, so that he can go to his dad's house. Yeah, because his parents aren't together anymore. So he lives with his mom, and his dad lives down south somewhere. So he's saying, oh, you could just take me and my dog, drop us off at the train station, and I'll be out of your hair. She's very annoyed by him, but she's just like, fine, whatever, because he's saying, oh, I'll tell on you if you don't. They go on the trip. end up missing the auditions. So they go to another location for the audition that also happens to be not far from where his dad lives. And during this trip, they end up meeting people, like revisiting an old friend and also his sister who was away for college. One of the reasons why I really liked it, it was funny, but also it reminded me of one of the books that I wrote. The characters remind me of that. Yeah, I just think that her books are very well written. So all the books from her I'm going to recommend. But moving on to the next young adult book on this list is Reggie and Delilah's Year of Falling by Elise Bryant. This one, if you could tell by the title, is a story about these two characters and how they ended up knowing each other and getting together and all the things that happened in between. And it's from both perspectives. So it's from Reggie's perspective and Delilah's perspective. And it's within a calendar year. So it's from New Year's to New Year's. And I felt like it was well written, and also it had characters that aren't stereotypical, like during Vlogmas, which I'm always going to mention because a lot happened during Vlogmas, but I prefer reading books about people of color, specifically Black people, because that's what I relate to the most. Black people are not a monolith. There are many versions of us. So in this book, they're into different types of music and different activities. Like Reggie, he's into Dungeons and Dragons, which he got teased by his brother and his family about. They didn't understand it. They're like, why aren't you into sports? Things like that. And Delilah, she's into rock. I like how they weren't a stereotypical group of people. Yeah, it was really good. Like, I personally not into Dungeons and Dragons, but I watched The Big Bang Theory and they play that, so I knew about it. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I know there were some complaints. I saw the comments on Goodreads. There were some complaints about a part in the book where they were like, oh, it's not necessary. They didn't have to do that. And I was just like, I saw it coming when I read it, so it made sense to me, but whatever. And I usually don't like to read too many reviews on books because sometimes they might spoil it. This is a book it's part of a series. I was just going to read this one, but then I ended up reading the other two. This is part 3, and I'll mention the other 2 in a minute. But let me go down this list first. The next book in the top 5 is Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry by Joya Goffney. So she has a book, like a personal book for herself, where she writes lists of different things, like 10 things I'd like to do by this time period, or 10 places I'd like to go, 5 people that I'm attracted to, whatever, right? So this is a personal book, and she was working on a group project with a couple of classmates, and her book ended up being swapped with one of them. He ended up losing the book. Somebody ends up getting that book and posting things from the book on social media and texting her and blackmailing her, like, you need to do this, otherwise we'll expose you. So that was a whole thing. I guess the message of this one was to face your fears. I don't know. I really liked it. I'm trying not to give too much away. I felt like it was kind of relatable, keeping things to yourself, writing things in lists and things that you would like to do, but you don't necessarily do them because something's holding you back. But eventually you just have to face them and get it done. Yeah, that's all I want to share about that because I don't want to spoil any of the book. But before they revealed who was blackmailing her, I was like, I knew it. I knew it. I saw it coming. The last of the top 5 young adult books that I read is Love is a Revolution by Renee Watson. And this one is over the course of a summer break in high school. She lives with her aunt and uncle and cousin because she has an estranged relationship with her mother. Her cousin feels some type of way. Like, she doesn't directly say it, but eventually she does. She says that, these are my parents and I understand what you're going through, but, I feel like you're kind of taking over a little bit. She ends up joining this club that's very woke, then when, I forget, what's the main character's name? I'll put it somewhere. But when she joins this group too because of a boy she likes, and she's like, you don't even like this. You don't like this program. You're just joining it because of this boy, where we actually care about this stuff. She felt very excluded and isolated. So the message is to love yourself before you love anyone else. And, don't pretend to be something that you're not just to please others. Figure out who you are and what you like, and then go from there. The honorable mentions are 2 books by the same author. One of them is Charming as a Verb, and the other is The Field Guide to the North American Teenager. Both of these books are written by Ben. I don't want to botch the name, so I'll just put it on the screen. I tried to keep the list as 5, but I still wanted to mention these because I did enjoy these books. However, these are books written from a male perspective. I like reading stuff more from a female perspective, but I still wanted to read something from a different perspective just to, be open-minded and see it from their point of view. I really did enjoy them. I prefer Charming as a Verb better than The North American Teenager, but the Field Guide to the North American Teenager, that book is funny. It's funny, but the main character is an a-hole. He's a jerk. Karma came around. But I will say that the acknowledgement section is the funniest acknowledgement section I've ever read, which is something that you might never hear, but it was so funny because he even mentioned somebody who used to bully him in school and how karma got back to them, so hi in your face or something like that. It was funny to me. I was like, I can't believe he said that. I recommend both those books. There were some complaints about the North American Teenager because of language and stuff like that. You have to think, these are teenagers. I mean, I didn't really curse back then, but that's me. But a lot of teenagers curse. A lot of kids curse. Okay, I heard when I was in school, as far as I can remember, back in the 1st grade, they were cursing. So, just because you hear your kids at home, they may not curse there, but they sure cursing at school. When I used to watch stuff like South Park and they were in 3rd, 4th grade, they're cursing. That was normal to me because that's what I heard at school. But, teenagers, they curse. They have raging hormones. They're all over the place. That was expected. So, sometimes you can't go by the reviews. But if you're expecting these young adult books to be clean cut, that's not what you're going to get. Okay? If you want like a realistic one and not full of fantasy and mushy stuff, you're not gonna get something like a clean cutter version. You're just not. Another honorable mention is Happily Ever Afters by Elise Bryant. That's the first of the 3-part series of the book I mentioned earlier. That is called Reggie and Delilah's Year of Falling. So that's book 3. Happily Ever Afters is book 1. You don't have to read them in order. I didn't. The Happily Ever Afters, the main character's name is Tessa, which is very interesting because that's the name of my little sis, my dog. The second book, which I'll get into in a second, is Tessa's best friend, Lenore. And the third book, with Reggie and Delilah's Year of Falling, Reggie is Lenore's cousin. So there's that. This book, Tessa, she moved to a new town. She's in a new school, an art school specifically for writing. She writes love stories. And she used to just share that with her friend, her best friend. She had writer's block for like the whole school year. But she ends up seeing somebody in the school who reminds her of one of the characters she wrote in one of her stories. And she got wrapped up in that. And I don't want to give away anymore, but there were moments where I was like, girl, please don't get wrapped up in that. He's just because he looks like the character that you wrote don't mean that that's who he is. So I'll leave it there because I don't want to spoil it. So now we're going to get into, because I didn't really read a lot of, well, I did. So that was young adults. I was originally going to do adult books, but I didn't have enough to have 5 favorite adult books. We grown here, right? So I would be looking for books and I would say, oh, these are really some cute covers. I like this. I like how the story seems interesting. And so I start reading it and then it gets just a little too spicy for me. Like, spice is fine, okay? You can have as much spice as you want. But sometimes it was just a little too spicy. It was a little too detailed. I don't need to know all of that stuff. And I was like, oh my God. I was clutching my pearls like, oh my goodness. There's just certain things that everybody got a preference, but that was just a little too much for me. Still good books, okay? Just certain parts I was just like, yo, I didn't need to know that. I didn't need to know the depths of what they were doing. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, now that that's out the way, this section is top 5 books in general. So they're young adults and adults. First thing on this list is The Neighbor Favor, which is by Christina Forrest. This is part 1 of a series. There's 3 parts. So this one, the main character's name is Lily. And then the second one, it's her sister Violet. And then in the third one, it's her sister Iris. This one is my favorite out of the 3 because I relate the most to this character. She's very introverted and awkward. That's me. And she also loves to read. She works for a publishing company. She was giving a lot at her job, way too much, which I can also relate to where I used to work. Oh, and they're in New York City. Also relatable. There's this one book that she read. The author only wrote 1 book, but left it as a cliffhanger. So she wanted to see like if she could reach out and see if he was thinking about making another one. They ended up emailing constantly. Something grew from that, but then he like sabotaged it and ghosted. Her sisters are on her about dating, and her sister Violet's having a wedding coming up. So although it's a lot of these stories, like romance novels, have this plot of finding a date for a wedding and then ending up being with them, like they're faking a date but then it ends up being a real thing. This isn't like that, so that's why I still really enjoyed it. And it's not, a lot of these books, there aren't Fantasyland, Disney type romance stories. I prefer stories that balance that out, where it's more realistic. And I guess I should have started off by saying the whole point of me reading these books, besides the ones that I'm writing, which aren't romance related at all, but is just, I needed a break from all that, the self-help books I was reading, but also, again, as a Black woman, we're not represented in the best way sometimes. We'll mostly see Black women in struggle of, and I don't want to read about that. All these shows that have that, I don't want to see that. It doesn't have to be that way. So I like reading books where we're being treated kindly and with respect. There's that. Okay. Back to the story. She's looking for a date. She lives with her sister Violet at the time. For the time being, ends up asking her neighbor. He says, well, I can't help you, but I can help you find somebody. But every time it seems like something might be going good, gets a little jelly. He gets a little jealous. I'll just leave it at that because I don't want to spoil anything. But it's really good. Because it's a series, you'll see their stories continue in the other books, but they're not the main focus. So it's very continuous and it flows very well. Her books are very good at that. And Elise Bryant's books as well, which I will get to in a minute. We are talking for a long time. Okay, so the next book is Scent of a Garden by Namrata Patel. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. She's another one of my favorite authors. I mentioned this book in Vlogmas. Hello. She is known for having a very good nose, identifying all these different scents. So she works at a fragrance company in France, but then she got COVID and lost her sense of smell. that like jeopardized her work and she was going to be demoted. So she hasn't been on vacation in who knows how long. She didn't use her vacation days, so they told her, look, you need to go on vacation. She's so worried about somebody else taking her job. She comes back home to the States, I believe in California, with her family. This book talks about a lot of, I guess when she was at home, she had to reflect on that inner child and also like the family dynamics that she had with her parents. Her father is very closed off and cares more about their booming business than the family that he has. He's more into the business and expanding it. The main character is very bothered by that. And then the wife, her mother, she is also working in the business, but wants to push her daughter, which is the main character. I need to remember these people's names. I'll put them on the screen. She's pushing her daughter to continue to do this fragrance thing, and she's very good at it. And I think a lot of us can relate to this overachieving and putting our all into a job that we don't really want deep down, but we didn't really get a chance to think about it because we were just trying to get work and start a career and be successful. When she was trying to get used to the fact that maybe she's not gonna get back to her job that she had because her scent is gone, they were still trying to make her do it, and her grandma, who she's very close with, helped her to get the scent back and also discover through being around all of them and like her best friend and childhood friends, she realized what she really wanted to do. So this whole vacation, she figured out who she was and what she wanted to do. There's also a little romance in there as well, but it's not a main piece of the story. It's just a little bit of it. That's as far as I'll go because I don't want to spoil it. But I think it's very good. And all her books are like that, where it gets into the family dynamics, revealing a lot of things. Like the older you get, the more you sit with stuff, the more you realize and reflect and yada yada. So that's my type of vibe. So I really enjoyed this. She had 2 other ones that I'll link below. So I'll stop talking about that now. The next book, those first 2 were not young adult, but this next book, it is, I feel like anybody should read this. So this is called The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stefan, and I'm not going to butcher this last name, so I'm just going to put it on the screen. You probably heard of this book before. It's over 20 years old. There was a movie based off of this. I saw the movie first when I think a year after it came out back in 2012, so I guess I saw it in 2013, maybe 2014, whatever. And I enjoyed the movie. I gravitated towards it because it was about being a wallflower, which I could relate to. And if you've heard that song by Alessia Cara called Here, that was my anthem back then when that song came out. Anyways, so I saw it pop up this year, like the book. I saw it in my recommended. So I said, oh, and it's on sale. I'll read it. Of course, like most movies, the book is way better. Although I do like in the movie, it was able to show the perspective of someone who is dealing with grief and PTSD and stuff like that. I feel like it's good for everyone to read because, if you deal with grief, PTSD, and just trying to figure yourself out. And one of the things that the main character Charlie mentioned was to be more present and to participate in life instead of being in the background, which I can relate to. The book is written in a format of, I think there's 5 parts, and they're all a bunch of letters that he's writing to someone, but he doesn't want the person to know who it is. He just heard that this person was someone who is a great listener, so he's reaching out through mail. You're probably like, why mail? Well, this book was, let's see, I think it was published in 1999. It takes place in 92, 93, or 91, 92. Early 90s, okay? Takes place in the early 90s. It was released in the late 90s. The 20th anniversary added a chapter at the end. So the character's sending another letter, just giving an update. It was really good. Trying not to spoil anything. Oh, there's one quote that I'll mention. Charlie had a teacher who he connected with. I forget the teacher's name. Why do certain people get with people that they shouldn't be? I don't remember the exact question, but it was like basically saying why do certain people choose to be in situations that they shouldn't be in? And the teacher responded by saying, we accept the love that we think we deserve. I feel like it's true because I've seen people, I think everyone has experienced this at least once, being in situations that you really shouldn't be in, but you feel like that's what you deserve, so you just stay there. And once you respect yourself enough, then you realize you do deserve better and you shouldn't be in that situation anymore. Yeah, there was a lot, girl, just growing up, coming of age type of movie, or type of book. So he was a freshman in high school. He ended up being really good friends with the seniors. He was technically supposed to be a sophomore, but he got left back because he was so traumatized and in the hospital to recover from all that stuff. So he ended up having to repeat a grade. Now, that was a mouthful. I don't know if the book content is even going to be long enough because I'm talking too much. But after that, another book I recommend is young adult, but I still feel like everyone should read it, is One True Loves by Elise Bryant. This is part of that 3-part series I was talking about. So the main character is Lenore. She has experienced a lot of letdowns with previous relationships or situationships where she's putting up with people that she shouldn't. She also has to deal with not feeling good enough, and also her parents with this black excellence logic, and they're not really understanding her because she's into the arts. She likes to dabble in different things. They see that as a bad thing, like you need to pick one thing and stick with it, whereas some people might see that as, well, you know, you like a lot of things and that's good and you should be able to explore that. So she's just trying to figure out what she really likes, what she's really passionate about. I can relate to that because I'm creative, so I like a lot of different art things, but I chose one main thing to focus on. But the thing is, that's not the only thing I want to focus on. So I get that. Also relating to people not really understanding where you're coming from. And then she also deals with imposter syndrome, like where she's acting like everything's fine. She has this mask on, she plays this persona, but in reality they don't really know how she's feeling, what she's going through, because she feels like she has to be strong and be the strong friend, the one who's always able to get back on her feet, the one who people can come to, not showing any sign of sadness, like she just moves on quickly, and that's just not the case in real life. There's that too. And also feeling like when she does meet a nice person, she's not sure about it. She's like, something's not right here. Probably because she feels like she doesn't deserve that, or it's too good to be true. Also, her brother is in school to be a lawyer like their dad. They get compared a lot, and I'm sure a lot of siblings can relate to this, where you're constantly being compared to your sibling, and she's just like, okay, but do you see what I'm doing? Like, are you proud of anything that I've done? It's considered a romance book, but I like it because it's balanced, where it's about finding yourself and what you like to do. You know, you go through this journey. You meet somebody during that journey. And maybe you're not ready yet. In time, things will work. The brother is also struggling with this perspective of excellence, because from her side, she just sees that, oh, they praise him all the time, and he just eats that up. But in reality, he feels a lot of pressure because he does see that they see a lot of potential in him, and he accomplishes a lot, not even realizing that he was struggling in school, but he doesn't feel comfortable sharing that with them because he's afraid of how he'll be perceived, and it's uncomfortable. It comes to the point where it gets so bad where it's like we just gotta lay out all the cards on the table. That was that. All right, so the last one, finally, 50 minutes in, is Confessions of an Alleged Good Girl by Joya Goffney. I mentioned her name before. This is not part of this series, but I feel like this is another book everyone should read, depending on your taste, you know, because You may be perceived as a good girl, but you're not really the quote-unquote good girl. That may have been a script that was given to you, but that's not really who you are. She grew up a church girl. Her family's very into the church. Her boyfriend is in the band of the church. He's the drummer. He looks good on paper, he has this persona that her father just eats up, but her mother sees right through that because moms be knowing, okay? They be knowing. They've been together for 2 years. We're grown, right? So they've been together for 2 years, but they've been trying to go all the way, if you know what I mean. But she's unable to because, well, she didn't know at the time, but she basically has this condition, which I'll put on the screen because I'm not going to butcher that name. And I'll also put what it means. But she didn't know at the time that's what she had. Instead of trying to work with her, he's being impatient and he's like, I can't do this anymore. So goodbye. When she comes home, this was on their 2-year anniversary, by the way. So when she comes home after curfew. Her dad's more upset about that than not seeing how she's not okay. She has an older sister, but the sister doesn't live there because she had a falling out with the parents. And so she would have loved to go to her sister about this, but she couldn't because she left and honestly, they didn't tell her where she went. And she didn't have her contact information. She's obviously heartbroken. And there's this one girl in the church who she was low-key jealous of because she seemed like the perfect good girl that her mom would have loved to have as a daughter. But after she got to know this girl, she realized she's not exactly a good girl, quote unquote. She's just herself and she's into the church because that's what her grandmother loved, and she feels close to her grandmother in that way since that's what she loved and her grandmother recently passed. So that's how she's able to connect to the church. The main character feels like she doesn't really fit in there, like she's not good enough to fit in there because her parents have such high standards. Yeah, so she ends up becoming friends with this other girl and a quote-unquote bad boy who it's funny because the first chapter they're having the sermon or whatever and he's answering the quote-unquote bad boy. I think his name was it Reggie? He answers a phone call while in church. Now y'all know that's a big no-no. So the mom, she snatched up his phone and I forget their connection. I guess they've been working with him to get him in a good place because he gets in trouble a lot. So they're just trying to help him out with that. Over the course of time, she became friends with him and the other girl. Her ex-boyfriend sees that she's hanging out with this guy and this girl, and he's like, what are you doing with him? Oh, so you with him now? And it's like, first of all, why are you all up in it? You're not together anymore. Mind your business. And it's just like, ew. And the more that she grew and spent time away from him, she realized that he relied on her a lot, emotionally, physically, mentally, all these things, but he wasn't really, it was very one-sided, he was irritating me. He was getting on my nerves. And it's like, I understand he also went through a lot, but at the same time, you're being very inconsiderate of what she's going through. And even after they started talking again and she told him the condition that she has and how she's working on it, he's like, oh, so it's going to take how long so we can just get this going again? And then she's like, a month, really? Well, how about you let me know when you're good to go and then we can start from there. And I was just like, ew, that's all you care about? That's get out of here. Like, I was getting so annoyed by this character. It's like, why do you suddenly care about what she's doing? You're not together anymore. You broke up with her because you couldn't get your jollies. So you know what? Mind your business. Mind your business. I could rant about this, but I'm not. I'm going to keep it simple. We already running over. We almost at an hour I've been talking, which is rare for me because I don't talk that much. So that was the last. Oh, honorable mentions will be the other 2 books from the series with the Green sisters. So The Neighbor Favor, that's the one that I mentioned first, Lily Green, and then the second book, The Partner Plot, with her sister Violet Green. The third book is The Love Lyric with Iris Green. Out of the 3, Well, y'all know my favorite one. But the second favorite for me is the third one. She's expected to be everything for everybody. And one of the things that the love interest said to her is, I don't remember verbatim, but it was basically like, well, who takes care of you? You're taking care of everybody else, but who's taking care of you? She didn't even know how to answer that. So he's like, you know what? Let me take care of you. That's a great example of having stories where it's not a struggle. There's some hardships and stuff because that's life, but it's not like a constant struggle. I'll leave it there. I went to the bookstore last year and got some physical books, some hard copy books, but I haven't read them yet because I've been reading on my Kindle. I've passed my goal of 12 books for the year on Kindle. I've read 17. I decided I'm going to choose the next 3 months to read the books that I bought in store because I don't want them just sitting there. So the first one I'm reading is All About Love. This is the first time in a long time that I'm not reading fiction. So this is considered a psychology category. This book is by the Bell Hooks. And there's certain things in there where it's like, yeah, I knew that already. But there's certain things that are a refresher and also give great details. Because there's certain things that I know, but I don't know why. And she does a great example of explaining why these things happen. And I'm like, ooh, that's good. Let me highlight that. I've been highlighting a lot of things, so it's really good. After that, I don't know what I'm going to read, but these other 2 books are fiction. And the reason that I'm reading this All About Love book is because I'm in a season of reflecting on all relationships. When you mention love or relationships, everyone automatically assumes romance. I'm reflecting on all relationships. Everybody. I think it's important to reflect on all relationships. The more I'm reflecting on things, the more I realize how effed up certain things were back then. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like I was always this great person because everybody slips up. Nobody's perfect. But I have been reflecting on things where I'm just like, wow, this person used me, or wow, why did I tolerate that? So there's a lot of things. So when I tell y'all that I'm working on stuff, it's not always about work. It's a lot of stuff, and it's a lot. And it's not for the weak, I'm gonna tell you right now, okay? Not for the week at all. I'm gonna wrap it up here. I really don't know if I have enough footage for this video now, but it is what it is, girl. Thank you for listening and watching the video. I will link the one that I did last year. It's way shorter than this one. Oh my god. You'll see me in the next video of Mental Health May. That'll either be my favorite music for the past year or favorite TV shows. See you then. Bye bye.